Hello, welcome to Under the Birch Tree. My name is Claire. I live in the southwest of England with my husband and my 4 children. And this is a podcast that's primarily about knitting, a little bit of crochet and eventually some sewing when I'm in a position to be able to do that. You can find me on Instagram as @birchtree_knits, and I would love you to come and find me there, engaged. I post my photos of my knitting there, my new acquisitions, and also quite a lot at the moment about the yoga that I'm learning how to headstand, so I'm posting my progress there at the moment. Ravelry, I'm not really using Ravelry much at the moment. I'm quite disappointed in how they're managing the change over to the new design, as a lot of people are. It doesn't affect me personally directly, but it does affect me because I do actually care about the people who can't access it at the moment because of disability issues. And I think that it's a shame that Ravelry aren't taking that seriously. It's not just a shame, it's appalling that they're not. So I'm not really using Ravelry quite as much as I was, popping in and out to see if they're actually going to start listening. The thing I'm most appalled about really is that they are shutting down conversation completely. I actually have not been engaging in the conversation very much apart from on Instagram, but I did post something asking why threads were being marked as resolved when they weren't. And the reason for that was not to criticise Ravelry, but because I had opened a thread because someone had asked a question about new Ravelry and it said it was resolved. So I thought, oh good, I'll find the answer to that in this thread. And I clicked on it and opened it and read all the way through it. There was no answer, there was no resolution, it just was marked as resolved. And I also was wondering, why are there so few threads about this in Ravelry? I soon found out, as my thread was instantly archived. And now, to be fair to Ravelry, I wasn't aware of the rule saying you're not allowed to ask about archive threads, but I did. So I did ask, and I said, "Why is my thread gone? I don't understand." And that was removed as well, and I was blocked from posting in for the love of Ravelry. I then posted in another forum and said, "Can someone just explain to me where the rules are? I didn't know there was a rule. I didn't know I'd broken any." And a moderator did come and say, "Well, these are the rules, but now I'm going to archive this thread, or mark it's resolved, I think." And then I did eventually get permission to post again in for the love of Ravelry. But I felt very angry at that time. I was really shocked that innocent questions from people who I actually wasn't trying to antagonise or cause any problems. I just got blocked without really understanding why, no explanation, no conversation, and I realised how many other people must have been being shut down, and I discovered a couple of other groups where that conversation was taking place. So Ravelry, my message for you is, sort yourselves out, please. There are people who can't use your forum because of accessibility issues, and there are people who are asking for your help and you are shutting them down, and it's just a really strange way to manage things, and it's not like you at all. Please change it. Thank you. I don't think that's going to have any effect whatsoever somehow, but the more people who are speaking about it, hopefully, the more they're going to change. Anyway, let's move on to knitting, and it is just knitting, this episode. So I'm going to talk a little bit, I'm just looking to one side because I've got my notes over here. I'm going to try not to look at them too often. I'm going to talk firstly about what I'm wearing and my finished objects, which are one and the same. Then I want to talk a little bit about the progress that I've made on the projects I've been working on so far, some new cast-ons and acquisitions, and then what I'm going to be casting on next, which hopefully will be ready for the next podcast. So first of all, what am I wearing? Well, I was wearing a pair of socks, but it turns out that although I do a lot of yoga, I'm not quite bendy enough to put my foot in front of the camera. Excuse me, pollen count is high today. So I'm going to have to show you in person, but they're not on sock blockers, but they are blocked so that you can see the shape of them. So these are, hurrah, I can show you too for accountability. 2 finished Wood Nymph socks by This Handmade Life, or by me, the pattern's by This Handmade Life, and the wool is the Knitting Swede Spartan, which is merino and nylon, and these are, oh, I think it's merino nylon, might be Blueface Leicester nylon. These are in the Spartan sock base in Nautilus. Now, the Knitting Swede is a lovely dyer, but she's not dyeing anymore, sadly. I think she does design patterns. I got this yarn from Ravelry, and I've already made, so I had 200 gram skeins, and I've already made a shawl out of it, which I've gifted to somebody, which I might see if I can get back for the next episode just to show you. These were knit on 2.75mm 9-inch circular needles, which I've loved using, but did cause me a little bit of pain in my hand. And I think last episode I mentioned that I hadn't been doing a lot of knitting because of pain in my hand, and I have managed to identify that it is using those circulars. When I started using those circulars, a few people said to me, oh, I haven't used them because they hurt my hand. And I said, well, it's just about how much you adjust yourself, you know, how slowly you adjust yourself to using new muscles and things. And I didn't listen to my own advice, and I knitted loads and loads and loads. So I've had some physio. I would recommend with any new thing you do, you listen to my advice and don't do what I've done. And you just take it slowly and let your muscles learn and your joints learn the new way of using them. I am now back to using 9-inch circulars, and I'm just doing it carefully, and I'm not getting any pain. And when my fingers and my joints start to ache, I'm just stopping using them. And it's fine, and I'm managing fine. I've got right back into knitting again, but I am going to be more careful if I ever use a new technique again. Where I got the pain was in this joint of my finger and across my hand here. And there was a few other places, but I think they were related to when I was using crutches when I hurt my foot. So I think it was all kind of interconnected. Just be careful, basically. Anyway, the other things I wanted to talk about with these socks is that I did them on 64 stitches. Now, the first pair of socks that I knit when I first got back to sock knitting, I did on 56 stitches, and they were too tight, particularly across the instep. So I did these on 64 stitches, and they fit fine before, well, they do fit fine, but they're a bit loose fitting. And it's kind of perfect for me, really, because in the winter, when I'm at work, I tend to have to wear black socks. So I will just continue to buy nice socks from Marks and Spencer or wherever. So these will not be for everyday wear. What they will be worn for is most of the time when I'm at home and I get cold feet. I even get cold feet in the summer. And I like to wear 1, sometimes 2 pairs of socks and a big pair of fluffy slipper boot things. And that keeps my feet warm. And I wear socks in bed when I first go to sleep, and then I get hot and I take them off. So that's really what my knitted socks are going to be for, is going to be for wearing at home. So for them to be a little bit loose is perfect for me. But I think my next pair of socks I will knit on 60 stitches, my next pair of 4-ply socks. So I will go for a happy medium and see if that works. What has worked really well with this is getting the instep right. So I have done an extra row on the heel flap, and on top of that I've picked up 1 extra stitch at the top. And that is for 2 reasons, partly to try and avoid that hole, which I have succeeded on one sock and not the other, that you often get. I don't know, anyone who knits with does a heel flap will know that. But that has, of course, increased the height of the instep and the length of time it takes to the distance of the decreases. And I do have quite a high instep, so that's worked really well for me. That fits brilliantly. While I'm on the heel flap, I've done an Eye of Partridge heel, which has created this lovely lattice effect, which I'm really, really pleased with. I've done the book standard decrease. This is what's advised in the pattern. Decrease its toe with the Kitchener stitch to close, which I really like and fits my toes really well. I've just adjusted the sort of way the decreases are done, how often, and once you move, when, at what point to move from every other row to every row, just so that it fits my toe. But these are really, really good socks. I'm really pleased with these. The only thing, and I hope somebody might come and post in the comments or give me some advice, is my lovely twisted one by one twisted rib cuff is flaring out now I've worn them a few times. It doesn't matter, it's not stopping them staying up. I know that some people knit that bit on smaller needles, and maybe that's what I need to do. But even if I do them on smaller needles, is it still not going to flare out? Why is it doing that? Why has it lost its elasticity at that point? If anyone can give me some advice, I'd be very pleased. Thank you. Right, so that's my socks. Really pleased with those. The next thing I'm wearing, and my next finished object, actually, these are my second finished object in real life. My next finished object I'm going to talk about, though, is this top. Hurrah! This is my A Hint of Summer sweater by Isabel Kramer, which I am absolutely over the moon with. It's the second garment I've made that actually works, that actually fits, and that I'm actually wearing on a regular basis. I'm so pleased. I'm getting a bit nearer to my handmade wardrobe. So let me stand up so I can show it to you. It's got a V-neck. It's got these, so you can knit it with or without these sleeves, and I did knit it with sleeves, but I think that I blocked the sleeves too wide, and when I wash it and block it again, I will just let these fall the width that they fall. So I deliberately pulled them out, and I don't think I should have done. Of course, you can knit it as long as you like. If you remember when I held it up when I was, I'm not sure what point I was at, I think I'd started the sleeves, and I said it just looks too wide, but I hoped that when it fell it would be fine, and then it does. It's exactly the right length for me. It just hits sort of mid-hip. I love these wedges on the shoulders. Yeah, I'm really, really pleased with it. I'm wearing it with a pair of black shorts, can you see? And with a white vest top underneath. And the reason for the white vest top is because it's lace weight. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. So yes, this is great. It's with fleece switch, baby alpaca and silk is the white colour. And the gold colour is 5 Moons yarn in Nana 2 ply, which I don't think she makes anymore, in the Lunasa colourway. I love 5 Moons yarn. She's really great. So I used probably just over half of each ball, and each ball was 100 grams, so about 800 metres, because it was lace weight. I think if you're slimmer than me, or you use less ease, you could get away with just 1 skein of lace weight for this sweater. The issue is obviously the stripes. So if you could get 250 gram skeins. So it really is lace is great for knitting garments out of from that perspective, as you don't need very much of it, and it gives it a nice drape with, it's got obviously a bit of alpaca in it. So the finished object I've brought to show you from the past is made out of lace weight yarn as well. Now, when you knit with lace weight, I was first drawn to doing it because I thought you don't need very much of it. 100 grams will go a very, very long way, as I can show you with this sweater. You knit it on large needles usually, so you get a very airy, light fabric, and it's lovely from that perspective. But it is interesting to knit with because there is no weight to it, very little weight to it. It feels very different to work with. It slips round on the needles quite a lot, and I did wonder whether knitting some of this led to some of my aching in my hands, because of having to hold my hands in a way that meant that I wasn't losing the yarn off the needles. Anyway, who knows? But I have brought this other project to show you. Now this is made with Manos del Uruguay lace, which they don't make anymore, in a purple green colour. This yarn I my mum bought me from a yarn shop which we visited a lot of years ago, and it was a real indulgence because it's very expensive, this yarn, and it's alpaca, silk and goat. It was intended for a particular pattern, but again, as I've told you before, I tend to buy stuff for a particular pattern and then never make that pattern and have to look for several other patterns before I get the right one. However, it sat in my stash, popping in and out every now and then to be tried for something else for a lot of years, and then eventually I found the pattern to make with it, and it is a shawl called Drops of Honey by Sweater Freak, and the pattern is no longer available as well, so you can't actually copy this at all, which I wouldn't mind if you did, but it's not possible to. So I'm just looking for where the cast on is. While I'm looking at it, there's the cast on. So it is an elongated crescent shape. There's the beginning. Elongated asymmetrical crescent shape. And it's really, really lovely. It's got these drop stitches, which you can't see because it's so fine. I love doing this stitch because you get like about 2 or 3 rows worth of knitting out of 2. I remember enjoying making this. I made it quite a long time ago now. And because it's lace weight, it's so drapey. I mean, it just squishes up to absolutely nothing, really. It's very long, as you can see. So when I wear it, I hope this doesn't knock the microphone, I tend to wrap it round and round a few times. It's really perfect for a spring shawl because it's so light. There. Probably can't hear the microphone now. But I really like this shawl, and I do wear it. So if you're up for knitting in lace weight, sadly you can't get hold of this pattern, but I do recommend it. And there is one designer who makes a lot of lovely lace weight patterns, and that's Kieran Foley. I did look at some of his for this yarn, and I can't remember why I didn't go for it, but it's this pattern was fine. Now there is one problem that I've just noticed that I am aware of with knitting with lace, and I've forgotten to mention it, is that you get pulls very easily. You just have to catch it a little bit. I'll show you here what I mean. Can you see that? So that's where it's just caught. However, it is very easy, and of course if it's got silk in it, it's pretty strong. It's very easy just to pull, manipulate the yarn a little bit to get that out. There we are, it's all sorted. But you do just need to be aware of that. Anyway, so that is, yes, my Drops of Honey sweater, Drops of Honey shawl by Sweater Freak. And I don't know why it's no longer available, but it isn't. So now, moving on to progress. So I have made no progress. Well, hang on my crochet blanket I showed you last time, I think I've done 2 or 3 more squares, not very many, hexagons, squares aren't they? But on my freeze shawl, which is in this project bag that my mum made me, I've made a lot of progress. I'm hoping, still got a lot to do, but I'm hoping to have this finished by the next time I podcast. And I have decided to podcast about every 3 weeks, I think. 2 weeks is too soon for me. Anyway, let me show you. This is, let's put that on the right side. Here we are. So this little progress keeper shows you where I was last time I podcast, 3 weeks ago. I've done that much. And now I have done this much. Da-da-da. So it's nowhere near really finished yet. It's still got quite a lot to go. But I think I should be able to finish it by the next time I podcast, and that is definitely my plan. I'm doing a purple section next, I think. These rows are very long now. I've moved on to longer cable so that I can see it spread out a bit. I'm really, really pleased with it. I'm really pleased. Look at this lovely pattern. It's really, really lovely. So it's a kind of mosaic knitting, and these little loops are where you have a long loop of yarn. You create a long loop of yarn 2 rows before, and then you pick it up. It's really pretty. A lot of slipping stitches and moving the yarn forward and back. And it's going to be, so how much longer do I need it to be? Still quite a bit, I think. I think I'm doing another 12, 13, 14, I think, pattern repeats. That pink is 1 pattern repeat. I think the purple's 1 pattern repeat as well. So, there we have it. That's the back. So that is my free shawl by Lisa Hannahs, and I'm knitting it with Knit by Numbers by John Arbon, which is the 4-ply stuff. And I'm doing it on 4.5mm needles. These are my higher sharps, which are my absolute favourite needles to use. And it's pretty much, on the whole, the only brand I use. I do sometimes use my old Knit Pros, but yeah, my higher sharps, love. So that is my my progress. Now I've made a lot of progress on the other things I was making, this and this. Obviously completed. But the next things I have to show you are some new cast-ons. And the first one is a bit of a flop, which I'm a little bit disappointed with, but which I've kind of moved on from. So this is, oh, here's the yarn I had left over from this top. It was loads and loads of it. Same with the socks. I can definitely knit a pair of socks out of 1 skein of yarn. Anyway, so this top is my baby, was going to be my baby cardigan, my sock yarn stranded by Jennifer Little, out of Drops Alpaca yarn. Now, I've stopped knitting it and I've put it on some spare needles so that I can show you, and then I'm going to frog it. There's a couple of reasons. This is for a newborn baby and it's too big. Granted, I could have carried on making it, but it's a bit too big. It was going to be steeked. And she recommends you just do the steek for the colour work, but I wanted to really learn how to do steeking. I've never done it before, so I decided to do it for the whole thing. And other people have done that as well. I wish I could stop saying I'm really sorry. The colour work, however, I won't show you that bit because it's where the steek is, so it's a bit ugly, but I am so pleased with the colour work. It's done really, really well. I'm really proud of it. So I didn't change the needle size, and the last colour work I did change it for. There's a couple of bits, so this row at the bottom where I've done quite a lot of 1 by 1 is too tight. So I've learned a bit from that I need to just be a bit more careful when I'm doing 1 by 1. But on these longer strands I've done much better. It's much more even, so I'm definitely making real progress with my colour work. It's much more even on the inside. You can see my strands are really good. But the other things I've learned from this is the colours, the colour choice. I thought I'd chosen really good colours for the colour work, but I haven't. The pale bits are too pale really to pick up the pattern with. So I would be a bit more careful with my colour choices in future. The main reason that I've stopped making this though is because the neckline, look, it's huge. I don't know why it's so huge. I've done exactly what the pattern said. Now I did think that maybe I could finish the sweater, pick up the stitches underneath here, rip out the neckline and then redo it again a bit smaller. but I think that I wouldn't have, it's big here as well. It's not just the ribbed section. The whole bit is very wide. So I'm a bit disappointed with that. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I could completely rip it out and start it from scratch, but I find that very disheartening, the idea of doing that. So I'm not going to do that. And instead, I've cast on something else. Anyway, so just to recap, what I've learned from this is that I'm getting better at colour work, but I need to get better at choosing the colours, and I need to be particularly careful when I'm doing colour work with short strands, so just one by one, because I'm not doing those loose enough. Keeping to to the same needle size is fine, so you can see the tension's fine over the rest of everything else. So yeah, that's good learning for that. Disappointing to have spent some time on it, but I did say to myself, when I start learning a new thing, I need to accept that there'll be some points at which I get it wrong, and nothing is wasted. So let's move on to my next cast on. My next cast on is in this project bag that's also made for me by my mum, who also makes all my masks for wearing when I'm out and about and at work and things. Now, this is called the Icefall Sweater by Tin Can Knits. I've made a shawl by Tin Can Knits twice over, the same shawl. They're really good at making patterns, really good at writing patterns, really clear, succinct. So I thought this one was likely to work out, and so far it is. So this is meant to be knit on 3.5mm needles, and the smallest size is 0 to 6 months, which seemed a bit big for me. So I'm knitting it on 3mm needles to get an even smaller size for a newborn. And I've checked the measurements against measurements advised for a different newborn sweater, and it seems to be working out fine. So I'm just not doing the bit where it says knit for 4 inches. Instead, I'm working out how many rows that ought to be, and then knitting that many rows. And I'm going to use the same yarn, the same colour yarn, but it is a colour work sweater, but I'm only going to use one colour for the colour work. And I'll put a picture here of what it's meant to look like when it's done. And this is how far I've got. So I've got these gorgeous little tiny sleeves, which were really fun to make. They've got a little bit of colour work on the cuff, but they're knitted. So this is the first time I've knit bottom up. The other items I've made so far have been knit top down, so it's quite nice to practice a new thing. It's quite nice to get all the boring stocking stitch out of the way, but I quite enjoy doing these. I knit these 2 at a time. So I knit the cuff first separately on DPNs because they're meant to be done on smaller needles, and then I knit the rest of the sleeves on a long cable and did them 2 at a time. And I've started on the rest of the sweater here. So that's about how it goes. I can't really spread it out too much because I'm on just the right size needles cable. But again, you've got the colour work on the hem, and it's got some short row shaping at the back to make it a little longer at the back. And there's the front. So I'm about halfway through the front section, only a little bit more, and then I join it to the sleeves, and then I start the colour work, and the door's opened itself spookily. Let me just shut that. So I'm really, really pleased with how this sweater is progressing, and I'm really looking forward to seeing doing the colour work. It's making me focus on it a lot because I'm enjoying it so much. But what I really want to focus on, of course, is that frieze shawl. I'll explain why a bit later. So that, I'm just putting the needles away. My dad makes me and my mum these little leather needle holders, and I asked him, these are very short needles, so I asked him to make me a little short one for those. And he did, because he loves me. Right, then one more new cast on, and that is another pair of socks. Now, last time I showed you this yarn that I had bought for some nice thick bed socks, and so this is what I'm knitting them with. Now, I'm not going to use both of these skeins of yarn again, it turns out, so I might make something else with these, with this yarn. I was a little disappointed with the colour when it came compared to what it looked like on the screen. What I've learned is that I should be a little bit more open-minded, because what I'm finding knitting the socks is that they look great in this colour. Equally, so Mum and I have talked a lot about buying yarn online because of coronavirus, and we've been a little wary of it because you don't really know what colour you're going to get. We had a little bit of a disappointment with some yarn that I mentioned a couple of podcasts ago from the Knitting Shed, and we just got some extra stuff and it's fine, and now I've got a bigger stash and that's lovely. But also what I've learned, of course, is when you start making it, you don't really know what it's going to look like when it's on the needles, and it can look very different. The other thing that we've both found in the past and that we had kind of forgotten about but need to acknowledge is that you can buy yarn in person and look at it and love it, and then you start making something with it and it just won't work. And obviously that's why I end up going through so many projects with the same skein of yarn before I find the right one. So whatever you do, you never really know until you start making it. So I think open-mindedness is the way to go, whether you're buying online or in person, because this is absolutely fabulous and I'm really enjoying working with it. So here they are to show you. Here's the big ball because it's DK, of course it's come up really large. And these socks are the Juniper socks by Helen Stewart, and here they are. I'm really liking the pattern. I love this. It's just a pattern of purl stitches on a kind of rib, which makes that sort of zigzag pattern. It's rustic wool, but I've put it on my foot a couple of times and it's really comfy. So even though it's a little bit scratchy on the skein, it's really nice. So these I am chuffed to bits with. Again, I'm using 9-inch circulars, higher sharps again. These are 3.25mm needles, which is just what the pattern suggests. I've done exactly what the pattern suggests, apart from I've done the tubular cast on from Marina Skewer's Heeless Hat again, which I also did on these socks. Maybe it's that tubular cast on that's causing the problem. It shouldn't be. I thought the point of a tubular cast on was that you got the same stretch and everything else. Not sure. Tell me what you think. Anyway, these are turning out great. I'm really, really pleased with these. So this is about halfway through the pattern section, I think, and then possibly less so. Actually, yeah, I think there's only an inch or so more of the pattern section, and then these also a heel flap and gusset sock. I can't remember how many stitches it is around, I'm afraid, off the top of my head, but of course it's DK, so much less than on the blue socks. But these are going to be great. I can see me wearing these with these over and my big fluffy slippers, and then I'll be warm and toasty on my feet all through the winter. So those are again in a project bag that Mum's made for me. So yes, Juniper socks by Helen Stewart with wool by Bluebell Yarns, with naturally dyed British whiteface woodland, and the colourway was fern. That's this stuff. Bluebell Yarns, you can see that there. And I think you should be able to see that as well. Yeah, I'm really, really pleased with those. So next is, I think, acquisitions. So I have got two things that I've acquired. This is super exciting because I won this. I won this on an Instagram competition. This is some yarn by Little Stone Cottage Yarns, who I've never bought from before, but I will be again. She had a competition for a custom dyed skein of yarn, and we had to put in what our favourite colours were, and I said rich autumny reds and oranges, and so she custom dyed me this. Now this is a sort of sparkle sock. I've never used sparkle sock before in my life. I've never been drawn to sparkle yarn, but when this came through the post, again another slap round the chops. Please be more open-minded. Absolutely love it. It's so soft. It's so soft. So it's 75% merino, 20% nylon and 5% silver stellina. It's 400 metres, 100 grams, so sock weight. And look at the richness of these colours. There is some oranges in here, look. And there's these dark reds. Oh, this is going to make a lovely pair of socks. I'm really excited to knit with this. So thank you, Nikki from Little Stone Cottage Yarns. I'm in love with this skein of yarn. Every time I get some new yarn, so I've got a big basket that I keep all my knitting in project bags and all my patterns that I'm working on at the moment. And then when I get a new skein of yarn, before I put it away with all my stash, I leave it out for a few weeks sitting on on top of my basket because I love looking at it so much. So that's that, my first acquisition. And my next acquisition is also a kind of winnings. This was another competition I won. This was a competition by Mad Scientist Yarns, Michelle and Scott, who had a competition to win a voucher, £50 voucher, no less. And oh, look at the colour of that on the postcard. It's lovely, isn't it? Love a bit of yarn porn. So I won the £50 voucher. At the time she wasn't posting out, so I had to be patient, which was easier said than done. And then I decided, then she started posting out again and she was having a sale. So I thought, this is a good opportunity. I could get quite a lot of yarn for £25, maybe even a sweater's quantity. So I have done exactly that. And it came yesterday. Well, actually, it didn't come yesterday. It came a couple of weeks ago. But as part of my becoming more fit regime, I'm buying myself, or my mum or my husband are buying me, little presents to keep me going. And every time I achieve a week of the plan that I've set out for that week, I get a little prize. And sometimes it's some yarn, and sometimes it's a pattern, sometimes it's nothing to do with knitting, it's a book or something. So anyway, for this week, ending yesterday, it was this yarn. So I got it yesterday, even though it arrived a few days before. So it came in this lovely little bag, which it's going to stay living in. And here it is. It's going to be a very bright sweater, but I have a feeling that this yarn is going to look, this pinky stuff, is going to look very toned down once it's in a sweater, because look how much pale it's got in it as well. This actually is really accurate to the colour that is on the website. So if you're looking for accurate colour photography, Mad Scientist Yarns is a good way to go. This is Element 4-ply, which is 100% superwash merino, and this colour is called Proxima Centauri, and this colour is called Adamantium. And I am going to make with this the Sipila sweater, I don't know if that's how you say it, I hope it is, by Caitlin Hunter, and I'm going to put a picture here of what it's going to look like. I'm going to do the long sleeved version. I've got enough wool for the long sleeve version. So obviously the pink will be the main colour, with the grey as the contrast on the colour work. So this is going to be some way down the line, because this is the nicest yarn I've got so far for making sweaters with. I'm very excited. So this will definitely not be my next cast on, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. But yeah, this is really exciting. I love this stuff. It's very, very soft. It's really soft. I forgot to mention when I talked about this Little Stone Cottage yarns that I also got a stitch marker with it. And it is the stitch marker that's on my frieze shawl. So I shall show you that. It's a little arrow. It's very sweet. It was just attached to the yarn when it came. I love it when you get a little freebie extra when you get buy or win yarn. So right, stop saying so, Claire. I'm now going to just tell you about my next projects. So my plan is to finish my frieze shawl before I cast on anything else. I've got my socks on the needles, I've got my little sweater, my icefall sweater, which won't take me long at all, neither will the socks, and my frieze shawl. Now I need to finish the frieze shawl first because of the next 2 cast-ons I want to do. One of them is a sweater, which I need my 4.5mm needles for, which are on the frieze shawl already. And the next one is another shawl, and I don't want to cast on a shawl until I've finished this shawl. So the sweater I'm going to make is the Manu sweater by Isabel Kramer, and this is going to be my first grown-up colourwork sweater. So I'm excited about that. Because I don't want to mess up something with some really expensive yarn, I'm making it with some drops Puna, which is what I made the T-Rex, Dancing T-Rex sweater out of. So I'm making it with grey and then with purple for the colour work, and I'll put a picture here of what it's going to hopefully look like. So I hope that by the time our next podcast I will have completed my frieze shawl and I will have started on this. So that's I'm very excited about. So that's one of my next cast-ons. And my next cast-on I have spoken about before is going to be my Coastal Fog, which will be in this yarn, which I've definitely shown you before, I think in the first episode. This is Ainsworth and Prynne, or the Knitting Shed, Merino Silk single 4-ply. And I'm going to make the Coastal Fog pattern by Callie Monster, which I shall put here. So this will be on 4mm needles and this will be on 4.5. So there's the plan. I hope that by the next podcast I have got those 2 things all ready to go, and or maybe even part way through. So that's it for this episode. Thank you very much for joining me. Please engage. If you like the video, click like. If you like the podcast at all, please subscribe. My subscriber numbers are going up slowly, which is lovely. But it is nice to feel like you're actually in a conversation with your viewers. So please do have a chat with me. Have a chat, tell me what you're working on. And if you've made anything with lace weight yarn, what are your thoughts on knitting with lace weight yarn? If you've also come across this problem with floppy cuffs of socks, please tell me how to fix it. It'd be really great to engage. Anyway, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again in 3 weeks or so. Bye bye.